Where is your consciousness? Is it in your brain? Is it in your heart? Is it in your whole body? Is it outside your body? Today, we're going to do a deep dive into that exact topic. I'm Carrie Blazer, and the main reason I make these videos is to share my free ebook, my 6 Divine Feminine Self-Love Strategies, to help everyone transform their emotional wounds into personal wisdom. And so please like and subscribe to my channel so I can help me distribute my free ebook to more and more people so we can together co-create heaven on earth. Self-love creates heaven on earth, and we're going to learn why later today. But let's start with what is consciousness, and the main man that's going to discuss it today, his name is Rupert Sheldrake. And I became interested in him because I came upon a video that his TED Talk was canceled in 2013 for pseudoscience. So I'm like, well, I got to see what that is. Like, I love me some controversy. Like, let's see. It's like, oh, I understand what's going on there and why he challenged the 10 scientific methods and whether they're valid or not. And because he went at the core of science with his own science, his cutting edge science, and questioned everything, he had to be canceled. So let's start with what Dr. Andrew Huberman sees and thinks about cancel culture. Let's start there. Let me bring up his short.
What we need to do is start to figure out how we can, I think, especially for the next generation of kids, how to teach them to regulate their nervous system so that they recognize that pulse of adrenaline as placing them in a compromised position. Like, we have to leverage the idea that being able to hear and listen hinges on the ability to be calm. So therefore, the ability to be calm is crucial to hearing and listening is crucial to our advancement as individuals and as groups. The problem is everyone's been trying to do this backwards. They've said we all have to get along. We have to cancel culture. We all have to, listen to one another. And I think, again, we have to start from the inside. We have to teach it physiologically. Now, I don't have a master plan on how to do that, but one of the reasons I'm here and one of the reasons I'm, teaching neuroscience on Instagram and not just in my laboratory is until we can learn to regulate the self, I don't think we're going to get where we want to go as a culture.
And I agree with Dr. Huberman. Until we learn how to regulate the self, we're not going to get very far with our culture. Like, why would a TED Talk need to be banned for pseudoscience when he brought tons of science with him? Why wasn't that an opportunity for further discussion? Why wasn't a canceling necessary? I'll leave you with those questions so that you can explore, but this is a profound, this happens constantly in our culture right now, where we stop things from happening outside of ourselves because we don't understand how reality is created. And we're going to get into how reality is created on numerous fronts, like what is our consciousness? We're going to dive into the field of epigenetics, epi meaning before genetics. We're going to hear from Dr. Bruce Lipton. So let's start with a short by him that really sets the tone about consciousness and how powerful consciousness really is with regards to cancer. So this is an excellent clip that will set the tone for today's discussion.
Whatever picture you hold in your mind, the brain releases complementary chemistry that matches that picture, and it releases it into the body. And the chemistry of the blood is what controls the genes and the behavior. Children, when adopted into a family where there's cancer running in that family, the adopted child will get the same family cancer. But the point, the adopted child has totally different genetics. What was the point? It was being adopted into a family where the programming of that child is what caused the cancer. It's consciousness who releases the chemistry to the environment that controls the genes. And you can change your consciousness, and you can change your environment. And all of a sudden I said, oh my God, we were programmed to be victims. It turns out we are masters of our genetic activity. And this is the new science called epigenetics. Whatever.
So a couple months ago, I was on a small group meeting, and Dr. Bruce Lipton gave a talk to about 20 of us. And that's when I learned an Einstein quote. The field is the sole governing agency of the particle. And how he explained it, and I'll bring up this video later, where they captured part of his talk, is that the field, the energy field, is the consciousness, and the particle is the body. So when we have fear in our consciousness, our body reflects that in form of an too much cortisol in the system. Well, what happens when you have too much cortisol in your system? You get increased rates of inflammation. Well, 90% or more of our diseases are caused by inflammation. I also learned from him, Dr. Bruce Lipton, that in that talk, that less than 1% of our diseases come from our genetics. And he also said the field is the sole governing agency of the particle, making the point that our consciousness, and I'm going to call it a soul, is what's controlling the field. So I'm going to let you think about that while we do a deeper dive into Rupert Sheldrake and his explanation of consciousness, and it's just beautiful. So let's start there. Okay. Well, let me find it. Sorry. Oh, here it is. Great.
I think that the idea that it's all in the brain is an unnecessary limitation. Materialist thinking about the brain is extraordinarily local. It localizes all these things actually inside the head. But within the sciences, since the 19th century, we now have a much broader view of matter and the way that nature is organized. And this is broadened through the concept of fields, first introduced into science by Michael Faraday in relation to electric and magnetic fields, then through Einstein's general theory of relativity, taken to include the gravitational field. And there are many fields in science now. Fields are defined as regions of influence. They're usually invisible. The gravitational field of the Earth is in the Earth, but extends far beyond it. The reason we're not floating in the air at the moment is because it's holding us down to the ground. It's invisible. This room is full of it, but we can't see it. It holds the moon in its orbit. It stretches far beyond the Earth. The gravitational field of the moon affects the tides on the Earth. So these are invisible fields with enormous effects at a distance, even though you can't see them. Electrical and magnetic fields also stretch out beyond physical objects. A magnetic field stretches out far beyond the magnet. You can reveal its lines of force through sprinkling iron filings around it, but the field itself is invisible. And the electromagnetic fields of your mobile telephone are within the mobile telephone, but stretch invisibly beyond it. This room is full of radio transmissions from mobile phones, from radio and television programs. The world is full of invisible fields. This is a revelation of 19th and 20th century science, which I don't think has been taken on board by people thinking about materialist theories of the brain. And what I'd like to suggest is that our fields of our minds stretch out far beyond our bodies. They stretch out invisibly, and our consciousness is related to and based on these fields.
So we're going to hear from Rupert, then Dr. Bruce Lipton. Then I'm going to share how our heart is a vortex and how the Heart Math Institute has been studying these fields that come out of the heart. I'm going to argue that's the soul. But we're going to get into all of that science in a minute, further justifying what Rupert is saying here.
If we're going to solve the hard problem, taking into account fields of the mind may be a very important ingredient, as well as studying processes within the brain. The easiest way to see what I'm talking about is indeed through vision. What's going on when you see something? Well, everybody knows that light comes into the eyes. Ever since Johann Kepler in 1604 worked out that there were inverted images on the retina, we know that the lens focuses the light in each eye. You have a small inverted image on your retina. Changes happen in the cone cells and the rod cells. Impulses travel up the optic nerve. Changes happen in various regions of the brain. All this has been mapped and scanned in greater detail than ever before. But the mysterious part is then what happens next. How do you create images, three-dimensional, full-color images? They're all supposed to be inside your head, representations of the outer world. So I can see you sitting there, you can see me here, but all of you are supposed to be inside my head, as lots of faces and the whole of this room is meant to be. And inside your head is supposed to be a little Rupert somewhere inside your brain. That's not what we actually experience. What we actually experience is that our images are out there. Your image of me, I'm imagining, is where I'm actually standing right now, and my image of you is where you are. So this one-way theory of vision, which we've all grown up with, and which comes from Kepler, the intromission theory of vision, sending in intromission, is taken to be the standard scientific view. But there's another and older...
So, I'm going to throw in what I think here. That seems to be an external locus of control. And that everything comes in and then it stays in here. It's like everything comes to the outside and goes in. Like God is in control of everybody and we're subservient to God. And we're going to get into how the heart is a vortex. Well, 400 years ago, they decided to teach that heart is a pump. Even though Leonardo da Vinci his work showed vortex. Well, why pump? Like this whole mechanical, that our heart is our body's like a factory. That the heart just pumps the blood. Well, it's physiologically impossible, based on the laws of physics, for that muscle to push thick fluid through 60,000 miles of our veins. So I'm going to encourage you to think about how your worldview shapes what questions you will ask, shapes what information you will accept, shapes what you will let in and what you won't let in. And is it limiting you? Is that how reality operates? Think about it.
The theory of vision, the extramission theory that says not only does light come in, but the images we see are projected out. So my images of you are where they seem to be. They're in my mind, they're in my consciousness, but they're not inside my head. They're where you're sitting. Now, this idea is familiar to the ancient Greeks. It's familiar to people all over the world. The developmental psychologist Jean Piaget showed that young European children, in his book, The Child's Conception of the World, think that they're projecting out images, that they take it for granted. So this is, in fact, a very deep-seated way of thinking about vision. And Euclid, the great geometer, used it to explain in the first really clear way how mirrors work. What happens when you look at something in a mirror is the light is reflected from the mirror. The angle of incidence, the angle of reflection are the same. But what happens then is you project out the images, which go straight through the mirror, being virtual, mental projections, and you see virtual images behind the mirror. And Euclid's theory is still there in school textbooks to explain mirrors. All of you, no doubt, have seen these diagrams. They involve little dotted lines behind the mirror that go to what's called a virtual image behind the mirror, a projection of the mind behind the mirror.
So I'm going to quote Carl Jung here, who did a ton of work on projection, that life is a projection. So I would say that Carl Jung aligns with him, and I align with Carl Jung.
Extramission, a sending out theory of vision, is actually taught to all school children, even though within most of science it's regarded as a total heresy. Intromission is the only permissible theory in biology and psychology, whereas in optics, which comes under physics, extramission is the standard theory. But no wonder it's confusing. People are taught two completely different theories of vision. At Ohio State University, Gerald Weiner, who's a professor of psychology, was shocked to find that most adults and children he interviewed believed in visual extramission, something going out of the eyes. Even his own psychology undergraduates believed it. So he called this a fundamental misunderstanding of visual perception, and he decided to re-educate them. And he and his colleagues told them forcefully over and over again, nothing goes out of the eyes when you look at something. And after repeated drilling with this into the students, when they were tested immediately after this denial of extramission teaching, they gave the correct answers. But when they tested them 3 to 5 months later, almost all of them had reverted to their previous views.
So that outside in is indoctrination. We live in a holographic universe. The heart is a vortex, like a black hole. It's creation, it's femininity. So why would we be teaching kids indoctrination? I'll leave you with that.
They were dismayed at this failure of scientific education. Much more recently, in fact, just in the last few years, Arvid Gutterstam, working first at Princeton University, now at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, has shown that by some very ingenious experiments that people attribute a gentle force to the gaze as it goes out of the eyes. And they've even shown using fMRI that regions of the brain involved in tracking movement are activated. And as he puts it, the results, this is a quote, strongly suggest that when people view a face looking at an object, the brain treats that gaze as if a movement were present, passing from the face to the object. And they found that this occurred even in people who didn't believe in visual extramission. It's deep, hardwired in the way we see. And they tried to explain this by saying there must be an evolutionary reason for it, that it's important to track people's gaze in social situations, and this leads to the illusion that something's going out of the eyes when you look at things. It would make much better sense in evolutionary terms if it's not an illusion, but if it's real. And so is it real? Well, you're not meant to think it's real because that goes against the dogma that the mind is nothing but the activity of the brain and the perceptions are inside the head. But is it testable? Well, I think it is. If when I look at you as a projection from my mind that touches you, my mind in a sense reaches out to touch you, if I look at you from behind and you don't know I'm there, could you feel that I'm looking at you? But as soon as you ask that question, you realize that the sense of being stared at is very common. It's now called scopaesthesia, the scientific name for it. Scop as in microscope, seeing, aesthesia, feeling, as in synesthesia, anesthesia. Scopaesthesia is extremely common. Most people have experienced it. I'm sure most people in this room have experienced it. You turn around, you find someone's looking at you, or you stare at someone and they turn around and look back. Doesn't happen all the time, but it's very common. Most people have experienced it.
Here's a prime example from my book, My Inner Heroine, Exploring Feminine Pain. I attracted several top-tier men into my life, 2 of them being fire academy instructors. The second one is 6'7", and I'm 5'5". So I met him in hot yoga, and I came up behind him, and I was like, ooh, who's that, you know? He turned around and came down eye level to me and just like took me. He knew. How did he know if our consciousness is only in our brain? Today we're going to look into how resonance works. When you resonate with something, when feeling someone stare at you, that's a resonance. If our consciousness is only in our brain, how do we resonate? What's doing the resonating? Let's keep going because this is fascinating.
As children, it's usually directional. You turn and look straight at the person. You don't just feel uneasy and search around. I have a recent paper on directional scopaesthesia showing that on the basis of 960 case studies, the directionality is just a basic feature of this and the way people experience it. I've investigated the natural history. We've interviewed, we've dealt with through questionnaires. We find it typically happens most powerfully with strangers, often with male strangers in situations that could be vaguely threatening. We've done interviews with more than 50 surveillance officers, celebrity photographers, and private detectives. practically all of whom just take this for granted. If you've ever trained to be a private detective, and I'm guessing that most of you haven't, you will have learned that when you're following someone, shadowing somebody, you don't stare at their back, because if you do, they'll turn around, catch your eyes, and your cover's blown. You have to look at them a little bit, otherwise you lose them, but you look at their feet.
Wow.
So among practical people,
This exists everywhere. And this is one of the topics that he covered in his canceled 2013 TEDx talk, because it so flew in the face of scientific dogmas. But everybody's doing it. This is how reality operates. But it's an inconvenient truth for scientists who want to indoctrinate us and control us. And why would they want to indoctrinate us and control us, especially in the school system? Well, let's remember that in America, the school system was created to take care of the kids so the women could work and to create more workers. And this is evidenced by a study that was started in the late 1960s. And they showed that 95% of 5-year-olds were geniuses. What is genius? Pattern recognition. What percentage of those exact people were also geniuses when they graduated high school? 5%. They had been indoctrinated out. I mean, I hated high school. It was all memorization and repetition and repeat. Ingest and regurgitate, ingest and regurgitate. There was no critical thinking. And when I went to UCSB, I got super interested in East Asian religious studies because the professors did critical thinking. I was like, oh, I got something to engage with. I got something to learn. I got something to explore. Like, let's go, Let's go. I felt alive. It brought life to me, as opposed to repress me. And I loved it.
Things are completely taken for granted. In the martial arts, it's taken for granted, and they have methods of training people to become more sensitive. Because if you can feel when someone's approaching from behind who might attack you, you'll survive better than if you didn't feel
Let's
it.
ask the question.
They train this ability.
In Florida, there's tons of videos, even one with 5 bears in a tree, that the bears climb the tree one day before the Category 5 hurricane hits. How do they know that? Okay, how do they know that? Let's look about dogs. How do dogs know like 1 or 2 minutes to get super excited before their owner comes home when it's a different time every day? How do they know that? We're animals too, but in Christianity, God gave us dominion over the animals. I'm the divine feminine reincarnation of Mary Magdalene. So, I got to call out Christianity where I see it. And this external locus of control, fear God, is the source of indoctrination. And there's tons of psychological work now that shows when a human has an external locus of control, like God said, God gave us dominion over the animals. That sets us up for a victim mindset, mental health issues, codependencies. And when God gave Christians dominion over animals and nature, look what happened. The Crusades, the Inquisition, burning at the stake, Manifest Destiny. How many millions of people were killed? How many millions of animals were killed? All the buffalo, 60 million buffalo in America were killed, except for about 1,000 that were left hid in Yellowstone. And I'm grateful for it. That was 100 years ago. We killed the beavers, we killed the otters because we're right and you're wrong. Outside in. The problem, exactly what he's talking about. When people believe that it's outside in and not inside out. Inside out is a holographic universe like he's talking about. And that's how, when I learned that the universe is a mirror showing me myself in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement, then I can go, oh, so I attracted player after player after player after player into my life showing me myself. What was myself? I had a wound in my subconscious that I'm replaceable. That's how I found that. Was by multiple men who all had multiple women. And I'm like, why does this keep happening to me? Why is my consciousness, doing this, showing this to me? And that's why. Because I had a false belief that I am replaceable. No one's replaceable.
Well, many experiments have already been done on the sense of being stared at. They've been done in at least 37 different schools and colleges. They've been replicated in many parts of the world. The statistical significance is astronomical. At the Nemo Science Museum in Amsterdam, an experiment on the sense of being stared at was running for more than 20 years. More than 20,000 people took part. It was called Have You Got Eyes in the Back of Your Head? And people had to guess whether they were being looked at or not in a randomized sequence of trials. The results were astronomically significant statistically. I mean, I didn't run this experiment myself. It was run by the Dutch Museum. The results were analyzed by Dutch statisticians, and it showed a massively significant effect. The most sensitive subjects, incidentally, were children
the least
under the age
indoctrinated.
of 9. So
that's how I see it. How do you see that?
We have something which is extremely well known. It's well known all over the world. The scientific evidence suggests it really happens. The scientific teaching of how mirrors work assumes that there's an extra mission of influences. It seems to be deeply seated in biology. It happens with animals. Animals can tell when they're being looked at, and people can tell when animals are looking at them. So here we have a very, very well-known phenomenon, very deep-seated biologically. Many different species of animals have shown this ability. I think it's evolved in the context of predator-prey relationships. A prey animal that could tell when a predator was looking at it, a hidden predator was looking at it, would survive better than one that didn't. And I think it has enormous implications for our understanding of the mind. Because if our minds are not just about what happens in brains, and if our conscious experience is extended through electromagnetic fields, which is what light is, it suggests that minds have an interface with electromagnetism. We know they do in the brain.
Dr. Joe Dispenza,
a lot of brain
I learned this
activity
from him.
that correlates
The
with consciousness
electromagnetic
is electromagnetic
field in the heart
activity.
is 5,000 times stronger than the brain. The neurological structure in the heart is far more complex than the brain, and the heart sends about 90% more signals to the brain than the other way around. So this is the way I see it. Our consciousness is our soul, heart and soul. Our heart and soul expresses emotions to our nervous system and our heart, which communicates to our brain, and then our brain releases the chemicals. The field is the sole governing agency of the particle, right? The field meaning the energy field, the particle meaning the body. So if in my soul, I haven't healed from wounds and I have an overabundance of fear, then my heart feels fear, 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 communicates fear, fear, fear to my brain. Then my brain overproduces cortisol, increasing the inflammation in my body, driving disease. We'll get into that in a second about how all that works.
There seems to be an interface between electromagnetism and consciousness, and why it should be confined to the inside of the head is a purely arbitrary assumption. It comes from René Descartes originally, I suppose, or from the ancient Greek materialists, but Descartes made a division between extended things, res extensa, matter, is extended in space, whereas mind, res cogitans, was not extended in space. It was defined by being unextended. So the idea was the mind was unextended, but interacted with the brain somewhere inside the head. So I'm suggesting that actually, when we let go of that assumption, which has been so limiting for so long, we can broaden our view of the mind and go further than we've gone so far in a way that will help solve the real problems leading towards the hard problem. Finally, I just want to say that I think the extended mind doesn't just extend out into the world, it extends throughout the body. When someone has, say, a phantom limb after an amputation, I think that that phantom limb is part of the extended mind, and people feel the limb to be really there. And I think what they're doing is projecting that image of the limb and feeling it from within as to where the limb actually is. The official view is it's all inside the brain, but I don't think it is. And so I think once we liberate the mind from the brain more generally, and consciousness from the brain more particularly, we have a much wider context for discussing this knotty problem, the hard problem of the relation between mind and brain. When we take into account the extended mind, instead of just arbitrarily confining it to the inside of the head, we're much more likely to make progress in understanding how minds are related
I hadn't
to our
watched
bodies
that
and to the
before
physical fields
I just
through
did. I
which we
watched this
see
part
and
of it.
through
I
which
like
we
to
have
get
our
his
experiences.
initial response because I know I resonate with him. So what does that mean? I resonate with him. Why do, a lot of women say, why are all men narcissists? Well, okay, girlfriend, why are all the men you attract narcissists? A lot of men will say, where are all the good women? Well, why are all the women you attract not good? This is how the universe is a mirror. So let me bring up a slide and I'm going to explain it before we listen to Dr. Bruce's Lipton's longer talk about epigenetics and how that all works. All right. Oh, here's my presentation. Okay, let me make it big. Okay, so how does a holographic universe operate? And I'm just going to break it down in simple terms. We have a soul or consciousness. It communicates out through our hearts, and then it communicates to our brain, and then our brain decides what to do. And I even learned from Dr. Bruce Lipton that our cells have receptors on them for our own energy. So even though the cell's inside my body, it still has to have a way to receive the energy that it's already within. It's like, wow, that's just fascinating. So what's it receiving? It's receiving how our souls communicate, right? So the feminine goes first. The feminine is a surrender to the emotions, and the masculine is the action afterwards. Like when a woman drops her handkerchief, then the man can decide what to do. The feminine is the surrender, the dropping of the handkerchief, then the masculine acts. This is just how it works, right? And so the universe is a mirror showing me myself in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement. And here's an example. So last year I was talking to my older daughter, and she was super upset about all of the immigration raids. And she's like, Mom, there's mothers being torn apart from the children. And I'm like, yes, but why are you attracted to that? I'm not attracted to that. When she was 5 weeks old, I got bacterial pneumonia because I wasn't taking care of myself. I went back to work when she was 3 weeks old, and I already had a 2.5-year-old. So I got bacterial pneumonia, became septic, spent 2 weeks on a ventilator in ICU, 5 days on 100% oxygen, another week in the hospital. I was all of a sudden gone. Trauma. We attract what we are through energetic resonance, meaning a vibrational match. Why was that event in a vibrational match for my daughter? Well, we have a lot of trauma together. I hadn't healed when I had my kids. I started healing 10 years ago, and I'm 55 now. I had my kids in my late 20s and early 30s. So now that we understand that consciousness goes beyond the body, we can understand how energy can resonate. And this tuning fork experiment is going to show us how. What it's going to show is that when you have two tuning forks, and one is vibrating at 512 hertz and one at 440, when the 512 moves, the 440 doesn't even notice because there's no resonance. They're not a vibrational match. But when it's 440 and 440, because the field is the sole governing agency of the particle, when this 440 moves, it moves this 440. Let's see it, and then we'll do a deep dive into the map of consciousness. Here we go. When it's the same vibration, the same frequency, that's when there's movement, there's resonance, and that's what draws our attention, right? Like if no one's watching my back, I'm not looking for it, per all those studies that Rupert just talked about. But when there's attention behind me, movement behind me, then that draws my attention. So you look at people's feet. Amazing. That was amazing. I didn't know that. But let's look over here. So our emotions vibrate at different hertz. Fear, grief, guilt, and shame are all 100 hertz and below. Well, I did some research, and viruses, bacteria, cancer all vibrate at 100 hertz or below. Where was I vibrating at 30 years old when I was so anxious I went back to work in the middle of January when I had a 3-week-old infant and a 2.5-year-old son, thinking that was a good idea? Well, my body showed me right away that I was putting money and convenience before health and well-being. Kicked my butt. So when I have, let's say, 40 hertz in my soul, and that's selfishness, I'm just giving an example. When my 40 hertz moves, then the people around me with 40 hertz also move, showing me my identity, showing me my tribe. Oh, we're the group. Well, what is your soul doing? Your soul is showing you yourself, showing you your own selfishness. So when you perceive selfishness outside of yourself, that is your soul showing you the selfishness inside of yourself and the beauty. One time I went to another shaman. I'm like, oh, you're so bright. You're so bright. What was my soul showing me? How bright I had become. And it took me I walked in the door. I was like, oh, I'm that bright too. Because I was finally internalizing the universe is mirror. And the highest vibrating energy is the most transformative. The universe is a mirror is one of my teachings in my ebook, and change is an inside job is another teaching inside my ebook. What are you projecting? Carl Jung does a lot of work in projection. Let's look at, I have some more slides here that will help us. Wrong direction. Okay. Andrew Huberman, love him. And all right, Dr. Gabor Mate, he does family medicine. He specializes in how childhood trauma impacts adults. And this is what he has to say. When people do not know how to say no to others in order to prioritize their own physiological needs, the body will say no for them in the form of disease, such as cancer. That was exactly me. I didn't get cancer. I got bacterial sepsis. I almost died. I was so septic, they could barely get an IV into me. And let's hear from Carl Jung and projection. Okay, this is from my book. So my book, I attracted several men into my life as mirrors to me. Because if I'm flirting with a guy at yoga, but he's not asking me out, then probably I got something to change. Well, my second and third, I call them my heroes, were Justin Waller and Andrew Tate. So I thought projection and Andrew Tate go together. He triggers a lot of people. But another Carl Jung quote to help us here. What irritates you about others can lead you to an understanding of yourself. And I have a similar quote. Triggers are our healing friend and not our healing foe. When you're triggered, your emotional pain's at the surface. So it's a perfect time to self-reflect. Let's read his quote here. If you imagine someone who is brave enough to withdraw all of his projections, then you might get an individual who is conscious of a pretty thick shadow. Such a man has saddled himself with new problems and conflicts. He has become a serious problem to himself, as he now is unable to say, they do this or that, they are wrong and they must be fought against. Such a man knows that whatever is wrong with the world is in himself. And if he only learns to deal with his own shadow, he has done something real for the world. If he has succeeded in shouldering at least an infinitesimal part of the gigantic unsolved social problems of our day. And that aligns with Dr. Huberman, who said, we cancel things outside of ourselves. That doesn't solve our problems because our problems come from inside of ourselves. We live in a holographic universe. Dr. Huberman, Carl Jung, Rupert, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Bruce Lipton. And I know this is a huge change in worldview for a lot of people, but I really want you to consider it. Take your time. It took me a lot of time. I've been doing this for 10 years now. So I want you to really consider, what is your experience of the world? And is it a hologram? Is it indoctrination? Is it outside in, or is it inside out? Because I know when my inside I'm not doing very well, my house isn't clean, inside out. When my inside's not doing well, my relationships suffer, inside out. So just, consider your options here. Let's bring up Dr. Bruce Lipton and hear from him before we get into how the heart is a vortex. And we're going to learn that blood flows in an embryo before the heart is formed. And we're going to rely on, oh, sorry, bring this down for a second. We're going to rely on a Tesla quote. If you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Okay, now we're ready for Dr. Bruce Lipton. Okay, let me find that one. Oh, here we go.
Okay, so then what does that mean? Well, then let me give you an analogy. Consider the body a television set. You are now looking at the Bruce show on the Bruce television. I go, yeah, but the show in the television isn't built into the television. The show is a broadcast picked up by the antennas and then plays through the television. Two realms, matter and energy. And based on Newtonian physics, matter affects matter, energy affects energy, but in Newtonian physics, energy and matter don't talk to each other. This is why in conventional medicine, up until very recent, the idea of spirit, consciousness, mind was not relevant to our health. Everything was genetics. And so we believed in two separate universes living together in that sense. But in 1927, the new physics, quantum science came in. I said, what's the foundation? And here's the foundation. In the material world, we talk about atoms as the smallest pieces of matter. And what quantum physics found out is when you take the atom apart, at the very base of the atom, it's not physical, it's an energy. It's like a nano tornado, a spinning force. And the atom is not made out of matter, it's made out of energy. So, what was the point? The universe doesn't have matter and energy. The universe is one thing, energy. So everything in the universe is of the same material, and everything is interconnected. And that brings in the story. The word for energy, the field is the sole governing force of matter. The energy controls what we see as matter. And in the new quantum science, the energy that controls that is consciousness, spirituality. That's why spirituality is now coming back into science, because quantum physics recognizes energy as the source and recognizes each one of us is receiving our own personal energy broadcast from the universe, our own field.
And Rumi, the 13th century mystic, they've proven that his wisdom aligns with quantum physics. What you seek seeks you. That's resonance. Isn't that amazing? And when I learned that, when like here's an example of wisdom and knowledge being born from the same truth, like Rumi and quantum physics. Wisdom says the universe is a mirror, showing me myself in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement. Knowledge says we attract what we are through energetic resonance, meaning a vibrational match. So for me, I attracted in multiple players, and all led me back to my guy from my childhood, JC. So now he's the head of global security at GoDaddy, and he's in a lineup with Andrew Tate, because Andrew Tate's in my book and he's Jared in my book. You know, picture speaks, I would say, a million words in that instance. And he's former FBI. So Andrew Tate was warm up for the fire department because I attracted 2 fire academy instructors into my life who was then warm up for the FBI and executives. So there's more Andrew Tate-like people around than I think we all acknowledge. Just my perspective.
And therefore, I can say my field is different than yours, Janet, different than anybody else's on this call. Each of us is receiving our own broadcast from the universe. This is fundamental. So this, I'm thank you, asked for the question. Give me patience to explain it, because this is the most important addition. And Shlomo's work connects all of this. And here it is. A human cannot exchange cells and organs with each other. As I said, if I put my organ or cells into your body, your immune system will say not self, and your immune system will destroy it. Well, immune systems see something physical, viruses, bacteria, parasites. I say, when they say my cells are different than your cells, what are they looking at? And here's the answer. On the surface of your cells are proteins called receptors. Well, we have receptors: eyes, ears, nose, taste, touch, pain. Our receptors are built into our skin. Well, cells have receptors built into their membrane. And there are a set of them, they're like antennas. Here's the point. They're called self-receptors. I go, what's unique? Here it is. No 2 people in the entire world have the same set of self-receptors. There's a set of them. Each of us has our own self-receptors, not on the red blood cells. That's why we can exchange and transmit blood from one person to another, because there are no special self-receptors on red blood cells. But our other cells that have a nucleus in the cell, skin cells, bone cells, muscle cells, brain cells, blah, blah, blah. On the surface, they have a set of receptors, antennas. The antennas receive a signal. Where's the signal coming from? The receptors are only facing the outside. So they must be receiving something from outside that goes through these antennas.
Right.
And I say, yeah, but each of us has our own set of antennas. We're receiving an energy broadcast, a field. An energy field is the invisible stuff all around us. Well, why is this important? No 2 people get the same energy broadcast. I go, so then what does that mean? Well, then let me give you an analogy. Consider the body a television set. You are now looking at the Bruce show on the Bruce television. I go, yeah, but the show in the television isn't built into the television. The show is a broadcast picked up by the antennas and then plays through the television. Well, this is true. The body is the equivalent of the television, but the receptors, called self-receptors, are receiving the broadcast of identity. That's why I know.
I'd argue that's our soul. Now, I haven't heard these people use the word soul. I do, but that's my equivalent in my own logic.
Each of us is different. I go, then wait a minute. The identity that makes us different is not in the body. It's in the field, the energy field, and we're downloading it through our own set of antennas. Each of us is receiving a broadcast unique.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I really, individuate to the soul. That my soul broadcasts me. My soul's purpose is different from your soul's purpose and Dr. Bruce Lipton's soul's purpose. And so that's how we're different, but also all the wisdom and knowledge is stored inside of every single soul. What I am tasked to do in this lifetime is access certain parts of my soul, and other people are tasked to access other parts of their soul, and then we co-create this reality. So we live in a holographic universe. And when our cells are, when we're picking up on our energy, there's a ton of fear, guilt, and shame that gets into the body, and that's when we get sick. That's the body mirroring our soul back to us. But when our soul has a lot of love, compassion, and enlightenment, those higher vibrating energies, then we don't get sick. I haven't been sick in 6 years because I resonate with those higher vibrating energies, and I don't resonate with cancer, bacterial infections, or viruses like the flu. So I don't get sick. It's amazing.
Let's say under radio, you have, let's say, AM station, FM station. I say, when you move the dial, here's one station, move the dial, here's another station, move the dial, here's another station. Well, on the human broadcast network, each of us is receiving our own station. We give it a name. It's called spirit. Spirit is an energy field, but it's unique. Only you are receiving that broadcast because only you have those antennas. Point. Janet, I love this point already. And the point is this: you cannot die. Huh? I go, what do you mean? I go, you're not in here.
Been there.
You are here. You're the broadcast. You're watching a TV. We say the TV breaks. We say the TV is dead. I go, yeah. Question: did the broadcast die when the TV broke? I go, no, the broadcast's still there.
Yeah.
I go, aha.
Yeah.
So are we. Guess what? If your television body dies, your broadcast is still there. Then guess what? If an embryo in the future ends up with the same antennas that you have now, you're back, but in a different TV. Does it make a difference if your TV is male or female? I go, no, you are not the TV, you are the broadcast. Does it make a difference if your TV is white, brown, black, red, yellow? I go, no, you are not the TV, you are the broadcast. I go, significance, and this is where Shlomo's work becomes so important to bring in. We all came from the same source. All humans come from the same place.
When we all accept that we're souls having a human experience,
culture,
and that,
that
1 +
separates us.
1 = 2 everywhere. There's wisdom and knowledge. There's a way of things. And when we analyze how Christian culture as opposed to indigenous cultures and how healthy the family is, there's where the indoctrination comes in. When we don't have healthy relationships and respect each other, we come in, God gave us dominion, manifest destiny, kill 60 million buffalo, 90% of, the savages, all the hundreds of millions of beavers, otters. Oh, wow, we just created our climate problems. We just created flooding, wildfires, drought, unstable trees, unstable ground, roads collapse, houses collapse. When we believe the indoctrination that, we have dominion over and we're in charge of, then we're not in relationship with. Here's an example. In Yellowstone, they brought back 14 wolves in the 1990s. They had no idea how impactful they would be. They ended up saving $94 billion in terms of flooding, wildfires, drought, water purification, stabilization of roads. When the wolves came back, there was one beaver family, but wolves corral the elk so the elk don't overeat the trees and graze. Well, the trees came back next to the rivers, so 10 years later, there were 10 beaver families. And then within 20 years, there were over 100. They couldn't count the beaver families. Because the wolves minimized the coyote population who were overeating the small mammals, then the birds of prey can come back. That complexity is what brings ecological revival and resilience. So let's all be careful about how we've been indoctrinated and how that's impacting us and others and what we can do to change it. Changing the world is an inside job. This is why, because you got to change your broadcast, what's coming out of your television. What used to come out of my television was a very liberal woman until I healed. And in 2024 was the first time I voted conservative. Trump. Shocked everybody. Let's listen to the end.
The programs, we learned those programs, but we were all born from the same source. The evolution that we talk about is to recognize, don't look at the TV and make a separation. Why? Because we're not the TV, we're the broadcast. Everyone has their own spirit broadcast, but all spirit is not in the body, it's in the field.
Sorry.
Each of us is a creator. Yeah.
Each of us is a creator.
I'm creating my life.
Fueling what we're going to learn next, that our hearts are a vortex. Black hole creates. Femininity creates. Okay, let's hear the rest.
I'm not creating the whole world. I'm a participant in helping the world, but I'm not creating the whole world.
Right, and each of us creates our own life. That's why I share my free ebook, because self-love creates heaven on earth. Heaven is a frequency in our hearts that we broadcast externally, not a destination to arrive at after death. I mean, Christianity teaches that the cross is the only ladder to heaven. Well, I argue that's control and indoctrination serving their own needs. When Christianity was created, there was the rise of the nation state. Early Christians were all about inner authority. That was Mary Magdalene, but of course she had to be repressed and was said that she was a prostitute, right? Well, they took that away in 1969. So, I came back in 1970 if they're going to be nice to me. But let's all take responsibility for what we're broadcasting. And when we all broadcast self-love, what kind of world can we co-create together? We're all creators. We all have a vortex. Vortexes can't be commanded, and in Christianity, the man tells the woman what to do. Well, the heart's a vortex. Direct with the mind, coy with the heart. Why coy? Because you got to throw the energy in the vortex, and then you got to wait to see what comes out. You can't command emotion.
Each of us is a creator. And therefore, and here comes the part, Janet, that I love it. You ready? Each of us is a piece of God.
And I'm going to stop here. If you want to learn more about that perspective, I would look up Neil Donald Walsh and his conversations with God. He also has a children's parable, The Little Soul and the Sun. I love that one. But let's learn about how the heart is a vortex, about how that each of us is a creator and what fuels that. I mean, our hearts, the electromagnetic field around our hearts is 5,000 times stronger than our brains. So who's in charge, the heart or the brain? Or is it about being in charge? I'd argue that it's not. It's about the complementary. It's about knowing our roles and staying in our lane. What is it to be healthy feminine, and what is it to be healthy masculine? Let's learn about the heart first. Okay, where is it?
Let me just read this because I think it's actually probably one of the best descriptions of the heart that I've ever run across. They taught you the heart was just a glorified meat pump, that it squeezes and pushes blood like some crude mechanical device, a hydraulic engine made of flesh. That is what they want you to believe, because if you buy into that primitive lie, you never ask deeper questions. But it is false. It has always been false. And the real science proves it. Dr. Francesco Torrenguas, a Spanish cardiac researcher, discovered what the textbooks refuse to acknowledge, that the heart is not a pump. He dissected thousands of hearts and found that the heart is a single continuous muscle band folded into a spiral. He proved that the heart works like a vortex generator, creating suction and torque, not pressure. He called it the helical ventricular myocardial band, and it changes everything. The real movement of the blood comes from pressure differentials, electromagnetic flow, and coherent resonance. The blood spirals naturally. It need not be forced through miles of arteries and capillaries. The so-called pump is not strong enough to push thick fluid through 60,000 miles of tubing. That is basic physics. That lie was dead on arrival. Here is the truth. Blood moves before the heart forms in the embryo. That is, by the way, a documented fact. It flows via frequency, resonance, and electric charge. The body is a field, not a factory. Your heart creates a toroidal electromagnetic field that radiates 6 meters from the body. This field syncs with the earth, the sun, and every living being around you. It is a resonator, a tuner, a conductor. It aligns the rhythm of your cells. It feels, it remembers, it emits, and it responds to emotion, thought, light, sound, and breath. When you feel love, grief, fear, or peace, your heart transmits it. It is the central frequency modulator of your biology, not a pump. And the institutions know this. The Heart Math Institute has measured these fields for decades. They know the heart has more neuronal cells than parts of the brain. They know it is a second brain. They know coherence in the heart transforms the entire nervous system. So why are they still teaching children a 400-year-old guess from William Harvey that has never been updated?
That is an excellent question. And that's one of the questions that Rupert was getting at. That our bodies are not a factory, they're a field. So let's get into my last video, which is my favorite, because it really gets into what Dr. Bruce Lipton was talking about. It shows how the heart forms and how the heart cells are initially not together and how they start sending out signals and they synchronize and then they come together and form the heart. Alrighty, let me find it. Here we go. Before the heart beats for the first time, something far greater begins to move. Long before your heart ever beat, thousands of cardiac cells made a silent decision. There was no pulse, no rhythm, no sound. In the earliest stages of development, individual heart cells begin firing electrical signals on their own. Remember those self-receptors? The self-receptors, like Dr. Bruce Lipton said? Then something remarkable happens. They synchronize. Separate impulses align into one coordinated electrical wave. That wave triggers the first contraction, the first heartbeat, the beginning of a rhythm that can last a lifetime. Well, I hope today's video gave you something to think about and a lot to self-reflect on and to consider some new perspectives. That it's always hard to bring out new. When you're up against Newtonian physics, you know, that's a battle, but that's okay. I'm up for the challenge, and I know I have support by several high-ranking doctors who are internationally respected. All right, well, please like and subscribe. I hope you check out that free ebook. Thank you so much. Bye.